Well, I'm really excited to have Rod Favaron with us today. Rod is CEO of Spredfast. He's responsible for the overall company operations and long-term strategic direction of Spredfast. Prior to Spredfast, Rod guided Lombardi Software from an early startup into a global leader in the BPM solutions area, and it was acquired by IBM very successfully in 2010. Prior to joining Lombardi, Rod served as CEO of MediaPrize, a brand asset management software company, and prior to that, Senior Vice President of Sales and Marketing for PCOrder.com, a pioneer in the e-commerce, commerce, and internet content services. And as General Manager at Mentor Graphics Corporation, Rod again brought his skills to the growth of that entity. Rod earned a bachelor's degree in industrial engineering from Louisiana State University and an MBA from the University of Dallas Graduate School of Management. He serves on the board of Bypass Lane and the Austin Technology Council as a mentor for Techstars Austin. Rod, we're really happy to have you here tonight. Tell us somewhat about your prestigious entrepreneurial journey.
I'm 3 out of 4. It's probably the best way to start that. So I started in really big companies when I got out of college and went to work for Texas Instruments in the semiconductor space. And then I went, so there were 60,000 employees. And the next company I joined was 2,000 employees. And the next company I joined was 5. And I just, over the years, I wanted to start early and set culture and build things. And so I moved to Austin to do a startup in 1997. So I'm dating myself a bit, but I've been here a while. And Spreadfast is the 4th, and it's going great. And only one of those 4 was a complete failure. So I feel pretty good about that. And it's okay to have 25% complete failures, and 75% okay. So there's the basic summary of the background.
I think a little bit more than 75% okay, given you've done very well with a number of these companies. Let me ask you a little bit about why did you decide you want to go from the 60,000 person company to affect the startup world? It's very different in terms of resource and everything.
Yeah, I mean, I think people. How would people answer that question? Oh, I like to be entrepreneurial, but to be honest with you, I'm just irreverent and I don't like working for people. And I think that that's what I've learned about myself over the years. But I mean, look, in a big company, you can have an impact. You can, if you get yourself into a role where you can have a big impact, it can be a lot of fun. And I probably should have turned my phone off. There's a violation of all rules. But look, for me, what's fun about early stage companies and little startups is you own your own destiny. So if the whiteboard's empty, you get up in the morning and you try and figure out what you're going to go do. And there's no constraints. There's no boss telling you what not to do. There's no corporate culture telling you can't do it. You might not have any money, so you might have to do it a creative way, right? Yeah. But for me, it's just the creation of something from scratch, the creation of a product into a market, creating a culture, hiring people, and ultimately growing something sort of from nothing, essentially, is just what I like to do. And the bigger it gets, the less fun it gets for me, but that's just me. So,
talking about getting big, your present company is Spreadfast, and that recently. Tell us about Spreadfast first of all.
Yeah, so Spreadfast is a software company. It's kind of a simple. I'll tell you a simple example so you know what we do. If we went down the street here to Whole Foods, Whole Foods has 1,500 to 2,000 social accounts, Twitter handles, Pinterest boards, Facebook pages, and you're thinking to yourself, how's that possible? And at corporate, they have a lot of social channels they manage, but in every store, there's a Facebook page. The cheese guy's got a Twitter handle, the wine guy's got a Twitter handle, and they have local following. And so they interact with customers where customers are, and a lot of customers are hanging out on social, and those are communication channels. And so how do you have 1,000 employees managing conversations and content on 2,000 different social accounts all day, every day? And so we built a product to allow you to do that. So instead of all those employees going to Facebook or going to Twitter directly, they just come into our product, and it makes it much more effective to manage all that activity, everything from marketing to what we call a social phone system. So when somebody tweets, you got to answer the phone, you got to call them back, you got to tweet them back. And so it's called a social media software platform, but essentially that's one example of what we do. The other example is we help get social content on TV. So if you see a tweet on TV on the Grammys or the Super Bowl or on the Orange Room on the Today Show, highly likely that went through our platform to get on TV. So it's essentially a set of social media products for enterprises to use to engage with you guys over the social channels.
So tell us a little bit about the business model. How do you make money?
So we sell people software, and they pay us money for the software.
So enterprise type, or subscription or SaaS model? It's
a pure SaaS model. It's all subscription. The company started in 2009, first product and first revenue in 2011, and now we have almost 400 people and lots of customers all over the world in all types of industries using the software sort of across their business.
You, not so long ago, went through a merger with another company.
Yes. So in January, so there's another company here in Austin called Mass Relevance, which is now Spreadfast. But they were building products in the same space, but for different use cases. So completely complementary. And their CEO and I got together January 31st, to be exact, over coffee at Houndstooth in the Frost Tower. It's a classic sort of startup conversation. And we were literally drawing on napkins about our roadmap. And Sam and I talked all the time, the CEO of Mass Relevance. And for the first time, we realized our product sets were coming together, and we had a bunch of joint customers. And so we talked to a few customers about, hey, what do you think of this? And what if we integrated these products? And we got incredible feedback. And Sam and I decided to put our two companies together, which we did on April Fool's Day, 2014. All the documents got signed. So we merged Mass Relevance and Spreadfast together.
So, that wasn't a small thing to do. You were almost equal size, or were equal size roughly in employees. Mm-hmm. Were there two different cultures? Were the cultures similar? I mean, there's a lot of integration. And it sounds so easy the way you talk about it. Well, we had coffee, we talked, we did the deal. But really,
the deal was easier than the integration. So, I think whenever you take, so first of all, these are two companies that were very proud of who they were. When you go to work really early for a company, you get to do all kind of cool stuff like, decide what the environment's going to be like, what desk you're going to buy, silly things like that, and sort of what the culture's going to be like, and how you communicate, and what's important to you as a company. I would say that the two companies were very similar cultures, maybe 12 degrees different, right? I mean, we were not sort of polar opposite cultures. Very similar ages. Both companies were sort of 4 years old. Lots of, similar types of people. We're selling to marketing people. It's social. What I didn't know, honestly, when we originally decided to do the deal was how many people in each company knew people in the other company. So, for example, the head of revenue marketing at Spreadfast, her brother, was one of the top salespeople at Mass Relevance. And my chief customer officer at Spreadfast, her best friend from college was the CFO at Mass Relevance. And so you had these. So when the day we announced the merger, we all went over to Brazos Hall, that cool little space over on 4th, and it was kind of like a wedding. There were two big columns of chairs and a little aisle down the middle, and I was standing up there with a mic, and my first thought was, oh my gosh, I bet you one company sat on this side and the other company sat on that side. So I said, hey, if you are a Mass Relevance employee yesterday, stand up, and they were completely mixed, 100% intermingled, without me ever saying a word. And so what's cool about that, and everybody knew everybody, so it is really hard to put two companies together. You know this. It's almost impossible, frankly, to do it well. But the employees were jacked up about what we were doing, and they were super excited about putting these two companies together. They were like, hey, we're losing some stuff, but we're gaining some new stuff. So we're 6 months into this, and it's been a blast. And so, we've had a lot of fun. I'm sort of glad we're through that now, and we're now working on net new things instead of worrying over little things. Like, I'll tell you one quick story. After we merged, we literally had the same desks from IKEA. They cost $199. They're a little brown top desk with legs on them. You can kind of change the height. That's it. Except they had 4-foot long desks, and we had 5-foot long desks. And literally, the employees were like, wait a minute, your desks are longer. However, we had a rule that you could have as many monitors as you wanted. They just were inexpensive monitors. So if you wanted to wrap them all the way around yourself, feel free. And they had a rule, you could have one monitor, but it was a really pretty, Apple screen, right? And so as we went through all these sort of little minor differences, it became kind of funny. We made a list of stuff that we weren't allowed to talk about because they were silly, integration things. But I will tell you, if somebody happens to leave the company that came from the Mass Relevance side, the vultures descend on the monitor. and you can't protect it because whoever gets there first moves it to their desk. Not that that's happened a lot, but it's there were little differences like that. But the integration's gone really well.
So, perhaps more personal to you, how did you and Sam Decker, as two equal CEOs, decide which roles you guys were going to take?
Okay, let's be clear. I'm smarter than Sam. So, and Sam, if you watch this, you know it's true. I'm smarter than you. No, I'm kidding. We flipped a coin. No, so it was Sam and I sat down, and what's funny is as much of a small company guy as I am, Sam is a smaller company guy, and it literally, I said, "What do you want to do?" I was really curious, and Sam's a little bit younger than me, and I said, "So you should go run this," and he said, "Look, I got to be honest with you. This is kind of already outgrown me. I was already nervous about the size of the companies before we merged them. I'm more comfortable small. I got a bunch of ideas. I got other ideas I want to start. He's obviously an investor in a lot of startups in Austin, so it was easy. It was like a 7-minute conversation, and he agreed to join the board. And I see Sam twice a week. We have sort of standing times on the calendars, and he does a lot of work for the company. Goes and sees customers and speaks on our behalf. But he's technically a board member. But that was another one of those things where this kind of meant to be. If you're going to put these two companies together, the first problem is two sort of Banny Rooster CEOs who both have outsized egos and can't work it out, and we figured it out. So and I think it's worked out.
Still meeting at Houndstooth Coffee?
No, I make him come to me now. So he comes down Medici, so a little closer to the office.
That's great. That's great. Prior to Spreadfast, I know you took the helm at Lombardi Software, and you took the helm during a really tough period economically in the U.S.
Yeah, the nuclear winter of technology.
The nuclear winter.
That's what we called it.
Absolutely.
It was horrific.
But you stuck with it. I mean, I think you were at Lombardi eight years?
Yeah, 8-year run.
You stuck with it. You changed the business plan. You changed the business model. You kept going on the product, and eventually sold to IBM. Tell us about being in the nuclear winter, running a company in the nuclear winter of technology.
Yeah. So look, obviously, everybody has either participated in or read about the bubble of 97, 98, 99, the first internet bubble. I was in an e-commerce company in those years, which was insane. It was one of those 0 to 100 million in revenue in months. We went public. Months later, we weren't worth as much. But it was that was one of those sort of crazy rides. And then we came down off of that, and I got started at Lombardi in really 02, 03 timeframe. And the problem with that timeframe in starting a company is you couldn't raise any money. I mean, there was just no money. Nobody was willing to put any money into early stage companies. So you just had to stay small a longer time and be very capital efficient, which in a way I think really helped because we were able to really focus on the product longer than I think you do sometimes in earlier stage companies. Sometimes getting customers quickly, while it seems awesome, can actually be a challenge because you don't really get to get the product where you want it before all of a sudden you're reacting to customers jerking you all different directions when you're not quite ready to be jerked all those directions. So the good thing about that time for us, and it was, I remember the first money we raised there, I pitched to 47 venture investors. 47. 48 said, okay. 47 said, no, dumb idea, you're an idiot. I kept those people on a list. Sent them all an email after IBM bought us. But yeah, so I mean, look, even those days, you just sort of have to believe. Right. But it was the key to that was staying small because you just couldn't go below cash because you couldn't get any more. Right.
So sometimes there's a purposeful nature of staying small, as you've described.
Yeah, I think so, and I think it very much depends on the pace of the market and how hard the product is to get right, and and what your competition's doing, and all those things, availability of capital, and we're in a very different market. This Spreadfast is in a very different sort of dynamic than Lombardi was, in the sense that the market is way more frothy. Capital is a little bit easier to get. The pace of the market is sort of an order of magnitude faster. So we sort of approached this one pretty differently, just because of the situation.
And please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think recently you raised a $32.5 million round as a top-up capital to prior capital you raised for growth.
Yep. Steady spending it every day, right now, spending it.
And where do you expect Lombardi to be in another year from now? I mean,
Spreadfast?
Spreadfast.
Lombardi's still going to be at IBM, killing it, but
Sorry.
Spreadfast. Yeah, that's a great question. So I think, look, strategically, if you think about this, the sort of communication style called social, what I can't tell you is where Facebook's going to be in a year, but what I can tell you is most of you guys are addicted. I am. You're addicted to the style of communication I'll generically call social. And you may have switched from Facebook to Snapchat or whatever we're excited about today. But we think that over the next 20 years there's going to be a ton of social interactive experiences built. Some are generic, horizontal things like a Snapchat or an Instagram. Some are more focused or targeted like a Pinterest. Some are more vertical. As a matter of fact, it was just last week I read about an oil and gas vertical LinkedIn. It was called oilpro.com, I think. Literally founded, had 200,000 oil and gas professionals logged in, set up with profiles in a year. Wow. Because there's a lot of, we think there'll be a lot of purpose-built communities, if you will, that are sort of vertical and horizontal that have different sort of styles of communication. And some are a little more media, like Twitter, where you really get your news, and some are a little more sort of more picture and interactive and family, like Facebook. So if you take that as a backdrop, we intend to essentially support any and all of those that allow companies to communicate with the people that hang out on those sites. So right now it's kind of tricky to communicate with people on Snapchat as a brand if you're Whole Foods, right? It's very hard to sort of get any useful content out there that sticks around, obviously. But Pinterest is perfect for that, right? Facebook is perfect for that. Twitter is perfect for that. And from a recruiting perspective, probably a LinkedIn. So we've built a platform that sort of crosses these networks. And every week, these networks are doing new things, and our job is to sort of manifest that back to marketers and say, how do you take advantage of these people? This is kind of like the new mall. Nobody goes to the mall anymore. Right. You buy online. So where do you gather? How do you get to 1 million people? I mean, we obviously think this is a couple decade. I don't know what it's going to be after 10 or 15 years, but we think it's bigger than the email market. We think it's bigger. Because it's not email's one channel, this is N channels. So we think it's a really big market. So we're investing a lot of money in our product and our product suite, and hiring salespeople, and hiring support people, and just scaling the business. We're growing international very aggressively right now. So we're just got our heads down trying to grow the company.
Going back a second to the funding you raised recently, can you share with us what you learned about the financing market today, as you've just experienced in raising money? Was it quick? Was it long? What kind of things might have come up from the investors that you hadn't seen before?
Yeah, well, so we're later stage now, sort of in venture parlance. We go to different kinds of people who are willing to give us a lot more money and expect less returns. I mean, if you think about then sort of the early stage market. But the last round we did, honestly, was an investor who had known us for 3 years. He was always late stage, and we weren't quite ready yet. And he literally called me one day and said, "You're big enough now, let's do this deal." And I didn't go out and raise. He flew here, and we did the deal. And so we actually did that round without going out and pitching to anybody. Now, last fall was probably the micro peak in the last 3 years of the market. So if you look at where tech stocks were trading, last fall versus, say, where they started to trade in early May, right? You were at a peak in valuation. Everybody was super excited, which is sort of classic, right? Everything's worth a little more than it ought to be. Therefore, let's put more money in right now. But these guys are great. They totally get our business, and they're out of New York, and we let them lead the round, and we did a round of it was the easiest fundraising I'd ever done, and it might have been the biggest single round I'd ever raised. I think I've raised $150 million over the years, but sort of single round, which is ironic, frankly.
Right.
That it was the biggest and maybe the easiest. But then it was a healthy time in the market, and we were doing really well, and we didn't really need the money just yet. So this guy was like, "Hey, I don't want you to go out and pitch to 40 guys." He said, "Why don't I just I'll give you good terms, and you can take it, and it'll save you all that time." Sweet. Where do I sign?
Do you have another friend like that?
No, I'm looking for people like that. If there's anybody in here who's got about $40 million to burn. No, not burn. Sorry, burn. I promise you I'll give it back to you and a whole bunch more on top of that.
But really, raising money is a big time sink for a CEO. How do you spend most of your time when you're not fundraising in the company?
Yeah, I mean, I sort of vacillate, right? I literally get up at the beginning of a quarter and make notes about, as fast as we've been growing, we literally keep breaking stuff, right? So the sales team needs to change, or the product strategy needs to change, or so. Earlier this year, I was very product-centric. I spent all my time with the product team. I was sort of the acting chief product officer until we did the merger, and we took one of the mass relevance guys, super smart dude, who was chief digital officer at Dell, a guy named Manish Mehta, who's now with us. And so until I gave Manish the job in April, I was sort of the product guy for almost 2 quarters, just because that's the part of the business that needed a little bit more attention, and we really needed to sort of focus on that.
Right.
So I sort of swing between selling stuff and making stuff, right? So which are essentially all you really do every day, right? So you sell stuff and you make stuff. So go back between sort of product hat and sales hat, and then you got to make sure you fund it and you don't run out of money, and the branding works and all that kind of stuff. But fundamentally, it's back and forth between selling stuff and making stuff.
I'm shortly going to open this to questions. So if you have questions, if you do me a favor and go to the microphone so we can capture them. But in between that, talk about team. How important is the team? Where do you find the team? When do you decide you need new team members?
Yeah, so look, we're in a software business. We don't have factories and manufacturing processes, and we don't have water rights over an aquifer. I mean, we literally, our entire IP are people who get up every morning, come to work, and at the end of the day, they walk out the door, and you just have to provide enough value so that they come in the next day, right? So they choose to come in every morning. So we spend a lot of time on people in general because it's a people business, and I think that when you're really little and sort of nobody knows who you are, it's recruiting is, I think, a little bit harder. And then as you sort of develop a little bit of a brand and a little bit of momentum, then more people know about you, and it's a little bit easier. But I will tell you what, there's not, the customers in the market, the analysts in the market will tell us my team, the sort of senior team, very smart. So a combination of sort of, young guys, like Eric Falcao, who was the CTO on the mass relevance side, who's just a genius technical guy who is super creative and innovative. We just hired a CFO who's been CFO of 2 publicly traded SaaS companies, who's kind of like the super wise guy who's sitting there, wise guy, not wise guy,
right.
Who's sitting there trying to help steer us through the next few years, financially, right? So it's a phenomenal team, and so look, what's important to me is that there's a bunch of sayings, right? Play for the name on the front of the jersey, not the name on the back of the jersey. Whatever analogy you like, politics will kill a startup immediately. It's too small. You can't. Big companies, when you get a group of humans together, politics, I think, is sort of natural, right? Just watch any sort of simulated society program. But get 400 people together in a company. How do you do that and make it apolitical? How do you make it about the company first? And if the company does well, everybody's career is going to be great, right? And if the company suffers, your career is not going to be as great here as you want it to be, probably, right? And so one of the things both companies built cultures that were apolitical. And as a result of that, the body sort of rejects the organ if we hire somebody who is focused on the name on the back of the jersey. If they're a little more selfish, it's obvious. It's just painfully obvious. And so I think that, to me, is the most important thing in the leadership team that we have is they're selfless. They're playing for the company.
That's phenomenal. Questions?
Hey, Rod. Thanks for coming out tonight. Just kind of been curious about this question since January. When you merged with Mass Relevance, how did you guys decide which name to stick with?
Yeah, great question. So we flipped a coin. No, the first thing we did on day one was we took the 2 marketing teams and we merged them under one CMO. And there was only one. There was a CMO on the Spreadfast side, but there wasn't one on the Mass Relevance. So it was so easy. We just sort of merged them all under. And then we sent that team away. And we said, you guys need to come back with branding suggestions, naming suggestions. You need to come back with how you would articulate who we are to the public. And you need to do that pretty quickly, right? One of the first things you need to get aligned on is what you're going to call yourself. And we actually got to do a little bit of that right before the close, before we announced it. So that team came back after they did a bunch of sort of share voice analysis and a little bit of kind of which name is more well known across the market and all that kind of stuff. And where Spreadfast had a sort of a broad-based, sort of stronger following, Mass Relevance was more known in the TV, in the world of media and TV. So what we decided to do was go with the Spreadfast name for the company, and we kept the Mass Relevance name under our media products, our TV products. So we sort of kept the brand associated with the world of media for a while. We'll sort of phase that away because I'll give you another philosophy. I'm getting paid nothing, so you're getting free philosophies all night. When you're a little company, you can only have one brand. You can't afford, so you can't like name your company and name your product and market both names. So you just can market one. You don't have enough money to brand two things or three things or four things. So we just said, listen, we're going to call it Spreadfast and we're going to focus on Spreadfast. And so, a lot of things when you look at, something as simple as Twitter followers, right? One brand was a different place than the other brand. So that's how we made the decision. We tried to make it data-driven as opposed to emotional, frankly.
This is more of a macro question. I've been fundraising out in San Francisco and just got back, and I feel like I'm still buzzing from the frequency out there, whether it's just early-stage companies or later-stage companies. You've been here since the mid-'90s. I just wanted your vision of how Austin can become in that overall world marketplace of startups and entrepreneurship. In your mind, where are we? I'll speak on behalf of, it was told to me multiple times in San Francisco that Austin doesn't play ball, and I kind of came home angry and want to change that, at least from my perspective. But I just wanted your macro vision of what you've seen in terms of early stage companies, not just B2B, but hopefully B2C growth here as well in Austin.
Yeah, so, Silicon Valley is at a place that I don't know that anybody ever gets to globally. I think they're at a very unique place, and it's been, 50 years in the making. If we go back to the Hewlett-Packard garage, right, and then tell the story. I think that I wouldn't even attempt to compare, right? I think Austin's an awesome place to start a company. I think the culture here, the people here, there's a ton of talent. There's definitely more, if you're looking for sort of track record experience, Austin is a B2B market. There's with a few exceptions, there are very few B2C success stories here. HomeAway would be obviously an exception. Retail Me Not would be an exception. There are a few exceptions to the rule, but for the most part, it's kind of it's a city that knows how to do B2B. So you can't compare it. One of my current investors is actually a Silicon Valley venture fund, and I've raised money out there a lot. And that place is just a different place. It's like going to another planet. The amount of money, the amount of entrepreneurs, the energy, it's special. There's a lot of issues with it, right? So I wouldn't trade, and I don't know that I'd want to become. I don't think you can. I don't think it matters. I don't think you can become Silicon Valley. You got to have Googles and Apples and Facebooks and Twitters and years and years and years and years of Ciscos, and you got to have all that happen over and over and over again for a long time, and then you've got kind of that base. But I'm not sure I'm answering your question, but it's I think Austin's its own care. I will tell you, outside of Silicon Valley, you go to DC, go to Boulder, go to New York, go around the country and try and find another market that's better than this. I don't think you'll find it. I think New York's got a lot of media going on, but it's mostly a lot of very service-oriented businesses. But I think Austin's pretty special if you sort of take away the 800-pound gorilla as a comparison metric.
Rod, quick question about decision-making and then leadership. So since, 97 when you did a startup to today where data is driving a lot of decisions, how are you making the key decisions about like when to start selling your product, when it's ready, and when to bring on a team, when to start rolling out sales? And then secondly, from a leadership standpoint, when you have people like Tim Barker and Manish joining your team, they're really talented executives. How do you still have to, lay down the law and be the boss, or do you let them do their thing? How do you balance between being the leader and keeping them under control and then letting great people do their things?
Yeah, I think I kind of work for them. I think that leadership-wise, I'll answer the second question first. I have a very simple alignment and independence, kind of another free philosophy. And that is, if you and I are aligned, if we sort of are thinking the same way, then you got all kind of freedom. Knock yourself out. If we're not aligned, you have absolutely zero freedom, and you're not happy with me, right? So Manish and I sit down and we get aligned. He's a professional. He's a super smart dude, great communicator, great strategist. And we talk. We sit down, just the two of us, every week for at least an hour with nobody else in the room, and we stay aligned. And the whole rest of the week, Manish is rocking and rolling, doing what he wants to do. And Tim and I are the same way. That's what I do with everybody who reports to me, is just spend enough time with them to stay aligned. And we're moving fast, so you can't stay aligned once a quarter. You literally have to stay aligned once a week. That's how dynamic it is. So, but those guys, I've got a CTO, Keith Sellner, who's done multiple startups. The guy's, he's built software for 25 years. He knows that game. My head of sales has been around Austin for multiple years, knows how to run. I got a lot of senior guys who know how to go do what they're doing, but we work pretty hard to stay aligned. And I think that's super important. And I can't micromanage them. If I did, they'd all leave, right? So you got to give them freedom to go innovate and make decisions and go do what they want to do. Go ahead.
Please, decision making.
Yeah, the first question was a bit of a comparison between then and now. Was that where you were going?
Yeah. How much is data driving your decision? How much is instinct as the CEO when you make those key decisions?
Yeah. So I'm a feeler personally, which is probably kind of weird, but I almost always make the final decision based on sort of gut, which I realize is not scientific, and you guys probably think that's weird. But I think to be an early stage kind of person, to be an entrepreneur, typically the data is not in your favor, or there is no data. If I went back to 2003, Lombardi, 47 people said, "This is a really bad idea. I'm not giving you money." If I were a data guy, I probably wouldn't have gone out and talked to the 48th guy. Right. So I think there's some. If you're going to do something brand new, there's typically not a lot of data, and more people are going to tell you they think it's a bad idea than are going to tell you that are going to say, "Oh, it's a great idea." And if they say it's a great idea, they probably haven't really thought about it. And so I think you sort of have to be almost. I don't want to say ignore the data, but if there's never been a market for what you're working on, what data is going to drive you? So I think one, there's that, but I do think that we're generally more analytical as companies today than we were in the 90s. But then let's be fair, in the 90s, I could sell you a PowerPoint presentation for $1 million. I could sell anything to anybody in 1997. It didn't have to work. It didn't even have to have a prayer working. CIOs would buy. They would just buy stuff. It was crazy. The amount of shelfware that sat out there in the 90s was ridiculous. That is not the case anymore. People will not buy it if they don't see it working. People don't buy a promise. They don't buy a PowerPoint deck. So what has changed is you have to build a product that actually works before they'll buy it, which is in 1997, I sold people stuff that wasn't even on the whiteboard yet. And I look back going, ooh. We eventually built it like 18 months later, but they thought it was actually there, right? And so I think the market's really matured, and you fool me once, right? I think people expect it to be real. So I do think the customers are a lot more data driven now. Show me, let me touch it, let me play with it, let me make sure it really works, and then I'll give you money.
So compare 2003 to 2013 or today in terms of finding the right people in Austin, starting a business.
Way, way, way better today. Way. Order of magnitude better.
Because?
Well, there's just so if you think about it, we've had a decade of people moving here. We've had a decade of people going to school here and growing up and doing entrepreneurial things. We've had a decade of the Trilogies and the Tivolis and and all the little companies moving people in here, the vignettes, and people just moving here because they want to live here. And I think the reality is we've had a decade of just more and more talent coming to Austin for whatever reason. In the last sort of 4 or 5 years, it's kind of hyper, right? I mean, it's become, even 4 years ago, South by wasn't South by, right? I mean, I could now I can't go, it's a digital conference, not the music stuff, the interactive stuff, but the first 5 days of South by, everybody in the world knows about it. I mean, I go, all of our customers fly in here for that event, all of them, and that has put Austin on a map in a way that I think is unique, frankly. So I think all those things together have made this, there's a lot more talent here, tons, than there was in 2003.
Share with us, if you would, some unexpected lessons you've learned during your journey in entrepreneurial endeavors. I mean, what's happened that you didn't expect, good or bad, that has been impactful on you?
I don't know. I think when you start, I think with anything, like if you start as a parent, you look back 18 years later and you finally learn how to be a parent, right? And then you're not a parent anymore. Doing this, when I first started in early stage startups, I didn't really know what I was doing, right? So you just had enthusiasm, and you had less pattern matching and less. You couldn't see around corners like I can now. But I think what's been cool for me, maybe surprising on the positive side, is the number of people around Austin now that are working on their own startup or working in early stage companies that has worked for me over the years. So that's really fun that we've moved in here, hired here, that we're an early part of say Lombardi or at PC Order, and now they're I can't go to literally there's not an early stage company in this town that I don't know somebody at. It's along the way kind of been a part of something we've built, and that's super cool. I don't know. I certainly didn't anticipate looking back, 17, 18 years later, and that being the case. Things that I've learned that were maybe not as positive. I don't know. I don't like the venture capital community. I'm going to say that on camera. It's funny. Every time I raise money, venture capital guys go, "So what are you looking for?" And I said, "I just don't want you to be dysfunctional. If you just be functional, you can be my friend, and I'll raise money from you." Anyway, I mean, I only say that because I say it to them. I say it to those guys all the time. I think that the world needs a more entrepreneurial friendly investment model, and I think some firms are very entrepreneurial friendly, but the vast majority are not. They're IRR finance guys who don't really get entrepreneurs, and I think that we need that. I've almost never had a case where I wasn't disappointed, which is shocking to say out loud. But when I look back on it, I think that industry is an industry that needs to change in general.
Interesting comments. Other questions?
That being said, the 3 guys who are currently on my board, investors, I love them.
And me.
And you.
And me. Thank you.
I forgot I was throwing you under the bus.
Yes, you were throwing me under the bus.
Okay, that was probably a tactical error.
No.
On my part. I've never raised money from you, so it's okay. I'm sure it would be a special experience.
Thank you.
Jesus.
Sir.
2 questions for you, Rod. One is on early stage startups, and I talk about this after having read through some of the tech marketing stuff. For a startup, how do you cross the chasm? So you are a B2B startup that wants to sell to big companies. But big companies look for you to have credentials having sold to other big companies. I mean, when you're first starting to sell, unless it's a VC-assisted sale to a customer.
They're not going to help you. Trust me. We've already talked about the VCs. Keep going. Sorry.
So how do you cross that chasm? I mean, how do you get to the big customers without having other big customers in place?
Yeah. So if we take the chasm model and we go back a little bit, right? You find those innovators all the way to the left. Those innovators are real. They exist in every market, and they're there. And you have to find those people. Now, here's the risk in that. Innovators will buy anything, literally, whether it's valuable, not valuable. I mean, think of the tech product that you've seen what's a tech product that never made it? I don't know. Yeah. One of the Dell consumer products. Right. Whatever. But I mean, the point is, people bought those because there's a whole class of people that will buy anything. So the problem is when you get the innovators to buy, all that really tells you is the innovators, they'll give you feedback, but that could be a false positive. When you get to people who actually have criteria, so going from innovators to early adopters is really hard. Most companies never go from never get to the early adopter stage because, again, they get a false positive with the innovators and it doesn't happen. But I think the early adopters are the ones who will tell everybody, and the innovators will too. But I think you can. I mean, we started by selling to big companies, and they were our first big company, and they knew it. But you have to sell to people in those companies that are willing to take a risk, that believe in the market, like you believe in the market, can go get money from their company to buy what you have, and then. I mean, once you get enough momentum, I don't think it's as hard to sort of jump over into the early majority as it is, frankly, to get from innovator to early adopter, in a way. I mean, if your problem now is everybody seems to like this and I need to scale up so I can get to the majority of the market, then the wave's probably real. There's probably a real market behind it, and now you're just trying to execute operationally and catch it, right? I don't, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And the second question was more on the social marketing side. So what you're essentially doing is you're trying to convince companies that inbound marketing works. On the company side, do you have to often convince them that this is the more useful medium to go as opposed to the traditional TV and print advertising? I mean, how much do you have to convince companies to, let's say, spend X% of their budget on traditional TV and print advertising versus spending the rest of the amount on social media analytics? I mean, how do you convince companies that it works?
Yeah, so great question. I think that 4 years ago there was zero money being spent in social marketing by brands. Now I think it's 8% of the entire digital budget, so it's growing sort of from 0 to 8%. The digital marketing budget is pretty big, and it's a massive budget inside of most industries. We typically aren't. It's not typically an or function yet. It's more of an and, in the sense of, hey, if you're going to run a campaign, and you're going to run that campaign on multiple channels, maybe that campaign has some TV spots, maybe it has some print stuff going out. It's probably got a digital component. Then it's going to have I don't have to convince brands anymore. There's 2 billion people hanging out on the social networks, and you can get to those people very cost effectively, and they'll opt in to hear your message if you do it correctly. It's a very different medium. For example, social people hanging out on social don't like megaphones. They don't want you to stand up on your soapbox and yell at them about something, right? As a brand, what they want you to do is come watch the conversation and then appropriately insert yourself in it, right? So it's sort of it's less about soapbox megaphone marketing of, hey, listen to me over here, pay attention to my message, which is sort of what most branding is. And it's more about, hey, there's a conversation going on over there right now. I'll tell you a simple story. Maya Angelou passed away on May 28th. On May 28th, my team was at Victoria's Secret in Ohio at their headquarters, and we were showing them one of our new products. It's a product that helps you discover what's going on in the social web right now. Like it's sort of identifying these conversations and moments. So we literally looked at the 4 million Twitter followers for Victoria's Secret, and right then in a meeting, they were talking about Maya Angelou passing away. So think about it, right? Most of the Victoria's Secret Twitter followers are women. That is their customer base, right? Women, huge respect for Maya Angelou. I mean, an amazing woman, right? Why wouldn't they be talking about her? And that marketing team looked at themselves and went, wow, I would have never guessed that my followers on Twitter right now, the people who've opted into my brand to pay attention to me, are talking about Maya Angelou. So they created a very appropriate tweet, piece of content, and pushed it into that hashtag, the hashtag Maya Angelou conversation, where millions of people around the world, including their followers, are talking about Maya Angelou in reverent tones. They pushed an appropriate piece of content out. It was the #1 performing piece of social content they pushed out in a year. They did not have a megaphone. They did not have a creative team. They did not create a campaign. They weren't branding themselves. They just found a place where millions of people were talking about something they cared about, and they found an appropriate way to put their brand right there. It's a little bit like a billboard, but it's a billboard where if you were driving on the road talking to the other person in your car about the topic, and that billboard appeared in front of you appropriately, right, about that exact topic, that's the effect that it has. And so What's powerful about social, it is not an advertising medium. I realize we all have Facebook and we all get ads. Nobody signed up for ads. Nobody went to Facebook and said, please send me ads, right? What they did go to Facebook for is to have a conversation with people they respect, they care about, they trust. So as a brand, you have to become a persona. You have to be human. You have to be authentic. You have to be real. And you have to slipstream into that conversation just like you're a friend. And if you can do that, and it is absolutely doable, then it is incredibly powerful for your brand, super positive for your brand. So we may have gotten a little bit off topic there, but the reason people want to do social is not to compare it to TV, which, by the way, we get yelled at on TV all the time. What do? You fast forward if at all possible, right? You don't really want to get yelled at. You don't want to be preached to in the middle of whatever show you're watching. So I think that's what's powerful about this medium is that it's about the relationship that a brand can have with their customers. And their customers have to opt into that conversation, and then you have to be appropriate. If you're not appropriate, they will shun you.
So,
speaking of that, I had an early demo run-in with someone on your team of that product, Spark. Is it still called Spark?
It is still called Spark, yes.
Okay, so I just finished Peter Thiel's 0 to 1, and what I appreciated was the idea of you picked your canvas and you had your target customer at the beginning stages of Spreadfast, and then now thinking forward of being able to think of new tools and develop those new tools so you went from helping businesses understand social to now, even in that anecdote you just shared, use it even better, right? And so how, as a leader, how are you instilling it, whether it's culturally, are you having more time with Sam or more meditative time alone? How are you making sure that you will be around in 50 years and continuing to create these augmented tools that no one would have imagined?
I'm personally not going to be doing this in 50 years, just to be clear. That would be close to a miracle, I think. But that, it's funny. I read an article today on IBM. I spent a little bit of time there after we sold Lombardi to them. And Ginny Romedy, who's their new CEO, or not new anymore, but the last few years, IBM's kind of been getting beat up a little bit for their performance in the last couple of quarters. And Ginny made the comment that how many 100-year-old tech companies are there? I can name a whole bunch of tech companies that don't exist anymore that were dominant players 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. And so I do think it is almost magic to be able to remake a technology company. Because let's be clear, whatever product you were selling in 1914 is probably obsolete by now, you think? And so you have to turn over your entire product line and your entire value proposition. So I don't know about the 50-year thing. That's magic. I think there are very few companies in the world that can sort of innovate continuously for 100 years. That's kind of crazy to me. But so back to us. I think what we if you ask me what solution, I just told you that one story about Victoria's Secret, we call that a real-time or a moment marketing story. That is one of about 25 use cases for social inside of a big company. I can tell you right now, the solutions for those 25 use cases across the industry are not even close to done yet. I mean, we are early. We're 3 years into a multi-decade market, 3 or 4 years in. So which is why we've gone from having 2 products to 6 in 6 months, because there's an entire set of needs that nobody's even started addressing yet. And the minute we think we've addressed them all, Twitter will come out with something new. And Facebook then will come out with something new. And then Pinterest will open their APIs and come out with something new. And, Vine will happen, and Instagram will happen. And, I could go down the list. 3 years ago, there was no Vine, there was no Instagram, there was really not a Pinterest. Twitter was nascent. I mean, if you think what happened in 36 months. So I think what we try and do is just have a culture of innovation, and we spend some money keeping the lights on with the product, and then we spend a bunch of money innovating. And I think that's one reason why this is a market that a small company will win. This is not a market that a big company will win, because the amount of innovation required for a sustained period of time is very high. Big companies don't innovate as well. They can scale. If you need 25,000 sales guys, there's only one way to get that. Somebody buys you, right, who has 25,000 sales guys. But if you need to innovate product really fast, sometimes it's the wrong thing to get acquired. because you get acquired and you get put into a big company, and they typically don't move as fast. So when our competitors get bought, we love it because we're going 100 miles an hour. They slow down to 22 miles an hour. And in a quarter, they can't even see us. That's how far ahead we are. So I think for us, it's about innovation and new products and just sort of continuously keeping up with what's possible.
Rod, how will you continue making sure that your company, Spreadfast, as it grows, continues to innovate? What kind of things have you done, will you do, so that you don't slow down?
Yeah, so that we have certain customers and certain partners that sort of, and we have some people in the company that are ADD, and I think that's good because they get bored with what we have and they want to go work on something new. So I think you have to have a collection of people who get bored easily. So we'll keep them that way because they just always want to go work on the new thing. So we've got to have those people. But Facebook, for instance, we work with Facebook at a relatively senior level, and they're always challenging us. They're always showing us ideas. I will tell you, Facebook is a crazy, innovative company that will break their business in order to do something different. They're kind of insanely creative. And so we have, on one side, we have Facebook trying new things all the time, and Twitter trying new things all the time, and Pinterest trying new. So you sort of actually for us, it's less about how do you stay innovative, and it's more about how do you sort through all the innovation ideas to pick the ones you think are going to work. Right. We don't have a shortage of new ideas. We just have to pick the ones we think have the best chance of surviving. And then we have customers. We have a lot of the big media customers. I mean, the ESPNs of the world. ESPN is crazy innovative. They are always trying to push the envelope on campaigns. I mean, the ESPN commercials are, quite frankly, the funniest commercials on TV. They are a great marketer, and they're always calling us going, we need new ideas, we need new stuff. What are we going to do in social? So I think we're going to be okay. We're getting pushed all directions to stay innovative.
Right. Last question. How did you come up with the idea of Spreadfast in the beginning?
So two guys who actually went to school at Texas, Ken Cho and Scott McCaskill, who I knew and had some of the idea, and then Facebook opened up some APIs, and so it was kind of an evolution of ideas. But Ken and Scott, I will give them credit. I mean, those guys really were the founding genesis. And I would say that it was directionally correct from almost day one. There have been a whole bunch of minor pivots as the market's evolved over the last 4 years. Yeah. I don't know that I call them pivots, but they've just been, the reality is you never get it right on day one. And actually you're kind of almost never right. You're just trying to, how much right am I, right? As opposed to how wrong am I. And so we sort of evolve and navigate, but those guys I'll give them really full credit for the original idea, and then I'll add a little credit for sort of helping steer it and guide it as we evolved it over the years.
Into the business side, so creativity and innovation together become key in these early startups.
No doubt.
Rod, you've really instilled the passion that's come clearly through in what you're doing and what you like to do as an entrepreneur. We really sincerely thank you for being here today and answering our questions. Please join me in thanking Rod Favaron.
Thanks.